Hey guys, so for today we're going to talk all about Metallo, who is a major Superman villain. There was in the Golden Age a character that dressed up in full metal armor calling himself Metallo, but we're going to more focus on the more well-known version who has the Kryptonite Heart and is a cyborg. Now, the character first appeared in the 60s, and I'm going to show you reprints from Showcase Presents, Volume 1, in The Menace of Metallo, and you can just see him here, and he looks a little bit familiar here, and, we have here John Corbin, a con and reporter who gets into an accident and, is revived, by a less than honest doctor. And he's, created to be pretty much, an android, with a heart that is run off of, well, at first he wanted to do it uranium, but it basically radioactive substances, And, the other material that he is using is kryptonite, which, as we know, is deadly to Superman. Now, the doctor who had performed this operation, it dies in an accident, and, Metallo's pretty much left on his own. And, John Corbin goes to work at the Daily Planet, and he starts romancing Lois Lane, but, she's not having it. And, Metallo's trying to find out more about himself. And, every time Clark is around him, he starts to feel weak, because, as he doesn't know at the time, he's feeling the effects of the kryptonite that's, running his systems. And, so he's weak every time he's around John Corbin. And eventually, Corbin, poses as Superman because, without the mustache, he pretty much looks like Superman. And lo and behold, the doctor, who performed this operation, he managed to survive. And, tells Metallo more about, the kryptonite and so on. So Metallo goes to find more kryptonite, but he ends up finding fake kryptonite at the fortress and ends up dying. So anyways, that was the first, appearance of Metallo in the 60s. And that was actually kind of it for a long while. The next Metallo we get is Roger Corman, who was actually not Corbin, but rather Corbin. Sorry. Anyways, this is in the Bronze Age, that is the 70s, and it is Roger Corbin, who is working for the organization Skull. And, he was helping them rob Starve Labs, and in an accident, he is knocked out, and, seems to have died. But the Skull agents, they managed to take him away, and they perform an operation to make him an android and to give him a kryptonite heart. Now, at this point, all the kryptonite has been turned into iron, so they've gave him synthetic kryptonite. And, now Roger is the new Metallo. And here he is, and looking quite gruesome here. The only part of him that's human is his face there, or, head. And the rest of him is, android. And, so he's causing grief for Superman with, the synthetic kryptonite. And, starts to battle him, and Superman manages to gain the upper hand. Because he sees that the more, Corbin is exerting himself, the less prominent the kryptonite is. So Superman's able to gain the upper hand, seal off the kryptonite, and it looks like Metallo has committed suicide here. But of course, in true comic book fashion, he ain't dead, and he's gonna come back. Just about to see that. So, years after the 60s, we get Metallo again, but it is a different person. He would appear not too long after this appearance, first reappearance, in this issue, and you can see the lead mask he's wearing here, which looks more like a skull, and I'm going to have you remember this image. And this time, he's actually gotten hold of real kryptonite, and, he wants more of it. But he also wants revenge against Skull, who have turned him into what he is, and he's giving Skull agents rocks that look like kryptonite as hearts. And Superman's wondering how he's doing this. And, Superman's chasing him down as, he's, gaining more kryptonite for him. And there you can see his lead face there better. Because he's gotten himself plastic surgery for a new look. And, at the same time, where Clark is working for Morgan Edge, and he's introduced to his new co-worker, who is Martin Corda, and you can see him here. And he's also told he's going to get a new co-anchor, who it turns out to be Lana Lang, and then he finds, Metallo, and who's getting more kryptonite, and he's being beaten by him. And Metallo, pretty much wants to get a proper heart. He doesn't want radioactive materials anymore. So he wants Superman's heart. And, so he can be a more or less proper person. All while, he wants revenge on Skull agents, because, he doesn't want to be this person anymore. Angry about being this android. And, just to backtrack, his first appearance, Superman 310, and that was 316, and now we're going to go on to 317. And as you saw, I talked about his 60s appearance. So it turns out that Metallo has taken from Star Labs this device that transports objects. And what he's using it for is to use rocks to, basically put rocks into the Skull agents' bodies, and he's taking their hearts. One object is being replaced with another. Very gruesome, type of thing, where, again, he's taking rocks that look like kryptonite, he's transporting them into the agent's hearts, where the heart should be, and he's claiming the hearts as trophies. Very gruesome, and he's going after all the Skull agents. And Superman recovers, and he tries to figure out how to deal with Metallo. And, all the while he hears from his co-worker Corda news about Metallo, and then he starts to wonder, wait a minute, how did this guy know stuff about Metallo before it happened? And, he's starting to put the pieces together while Corbin is going after the final Skull agents. And it appears as if he's made this transfer and given Superman kryptonite in place of his heart. And, he's all the while going after the Skull agents. And then the police turn on their sirens and whatnot, and radio waves, and Metallo is put out of commission. And Superman reveals, actually, he's wearing green makeup, and he's taken the heart of a dead Kryptonian from Kandor, put it in a lead container. So, Metallo got a Kryptonite heart, just not Superman's, and he quickly put on, green makeup. And finds out, as he already suspected, that Metallo was posing as his co-worker. And, basically he's defeated Metallo, and he's going to take him away. He no longer has the kryptonite, and, so he's no longer a threat. So those are, a threat for the moment. Those are the three main appearances of that version of Metallo, and he would pop up back again off and on before the crisis. And again, remember how he looks here. Now, when Superman was rebooted in the mid-'80s, we get Metallo, sort of a new version of character. This continuity's version of the character. Still the same basic thing of, the killer with the Kryptonite Heart. And, this is the first issue of the reboot. John Byrne, where Superman has found, the lab of scientists who have been following him around. And this scientist had, thought that Superman was the sort of advance guard of a alien invasion. And it turns out he had taken in Corbin and, again, made him an android, give him the Kryptonite Heart, because he knows kryptonite is harmful to Superman. Then here we have Corbin trying to sort of assault Lois Lane while Clark takes action. And, but, it's not so easy because Corbin has, the Kryptonite Heart, so it's a bit of a struggle here. And, Corbin pretty much seems to have the upper hand. And it's pretty brutal battle for Superman here. Because Corbin's using the kryptonite to attack Superman, and, it plans to kill him. And just as he's about to strike and win out, all of a sudden he disappears. And, so Superman wins, but by default. And it turns out that Metallo had been scooped up by Lex Luthor's crew, and this is the Lex Luthor that is, a businessman. And here we get to see him without his flesh, and the kryptonite material, which Lex, takes here. And, so that was, this first version of, Metallo. And he would pop up now and again. Probably his most significant appearance would be in Public Enemies, where he takes on the look of the animated series version of the character. And they briefly have here that maybe he killed the Waynes, but luckily they didn't go too far with that. And, anyways, so he's got his sort of more half humanoid appearance here, and even shoots Superman with a Kryptonian bullet, and Batman has to end up operating. But anyways, for a while in the story, Up and Away, Metallo would have different types of kryptonite in his system that Lex Luthor gave him. And then we get another different origin and secret origin, where Corbin is, working for the military and working for Sam Lane, that is, Lois Lane's father. And here he is, once again, trying to make the moves on Lois Lane, and once again, she ain't having it. And here's a great moment where he tries to, give Clark the grip, but Clark's grip is far stronger, and he's, sort of surprised by this. And, he gets a suit where, Project Metallo, whatever. And, so he's going to use the military, wanted to use that for him to fight Superman. And again, he has the kryptonite to weaken Superman, and Superman has to fight him. And through the battle, Corbin's hit, and he's pretty much stuck in the suit while Lex Luthor operates, and is going to give him a, pretty much changes everything. So Metallo now has a new look. And again, you can see how the, new look, quote unquote, is influenced by the 70s look. Here's that. And that. So very similar here. Lead mask, green, and more skull-like. And as we see here, he's back for a rematch, and Superman has to fight him. I kind of like this version, again, because it's called back to the way he looked here for a while. Of course, Superman is able to defeat him, and, put him out of action. Now, this version will pop up briefly during the New Krypton storyline. Here we go, still again, with his, sort of different looking, but same, skull-like face. Then we get a whole other origin in New 52, where, again, working for the military, and it's an experiment, and, things go wrong, and he has the Kryptonite Heart, and he's going to fight Superman, and is controlled by, Brainiac for a while, and fights Superman for a bit. But still, basically the same ideas that were presented in Secret Origin, pretty much. Now, Metallo would have a few appearances in various other media. He is probably... his first appearance was in the Superboy series, a series that came on during the late 80s and early 90s. For those of you who don't like Smallville and want Titan fights, this is the way to go. Anyways, he appears in Superboy, and you can just about see him here. Sort of. There we go. That's a little bit more in focus. And, you know, he basically looks like he's wearing a robotic suit with the Kryptonite Heart. I like the actor for this one. And he would have various return appearances and would, you know, fight Superboy for a while. Metallo would have... And here he's called Roger Corman rather than John. So it's as if, you know, we're introducing the brother first, before we get the, you know, proper version, you know, maybe. We get Metallo briefly, and here Lois Lane's father is responsible for his creation in Lois and Clark series. Only one appearance, but pretty good appearance. He would become more prominent in the Superman animated series. And this is probably the most that we get to see of Metallo in this series. Where, you know, and we see him here. And again, as I said, Public Enemy is very much drawing off the way he looks in this animated series. But this is probably the most prominent we see Metallo in any various series and whatnot, you know, because he appears in more episodes than anything else. And I think we have this series to thank for making him popular again, you know, in the public focus. Whereas before, he would sort of be an on-off again villain, but here he is more prominent focus. And, you know, anyways, we get him voiced by Michael York, who I think of best in the Three Musketeers movies. Metallo would appear again in Smallville. Just about see him here, where he's played by the very sexy Brian Austin Green from 90210. And, you know, here, you know, Kryptonite Heart, and more humanoid with, you know, android attachments. And we would get another version in the recent Supergirl series. And we get not only him, but various Metallos that would fight Supergirl and whatnot. But anyways, so that's, you know, the story of Metallo, you know, the killer with the Kryptonite Heart, who has fought Superman, you know, from the 60s, the 70s, and onwards. Not, you know, probably major foe compared to Lex Luthor or Brainiac or whatnot, but still a villain that would cause Superman grief now and again. Anyways, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Take care and see you next time.